Welcome to the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast, powered by Hiscox. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. Throughout my career, I've had side hustles, some of which have turned into real businesses. But first and foremost, I'm a serial technology entrepreneur. In the creator space, we hear plenty of advice on how to hustle harder and why you can sleep when you're dead. On this show, we ask new questions in hopes of getting new answers. Questions like, how can small businesses work smarter? How do you achieve balance between work and family? How can we redefine success in our businesses so that we don't burn out after year 3? Every week, I sit down with business founders at various stages of their side hustle to small business journey. These entrepreneurs are pushing the envelope while keeping their values. Keep listening for conversation, context, and camaraderie. Mary Nakaya and Melissa Poros met at church in Los Angeles. While Mary had an art background as a college professor, Melissa was just excited to play with clay on Mary's pottery wheel. As the two developed a friendship, they also started dreaming of a ceramic-focused jewelry business. Nomad Artisan Company was launched 6 months later. Since then, Mary and Melissa have grown their jewelry business by going door-to-door to LA boutiques and growing their social media presence. They've navigated working as a remote team long before the pandemic forced us all to do so. Oh, and did I mention? They're also moms. Melissa and Mary are filled to the brim with encouragement, funny stories, and sage advice. Keep listening. The entrepreneurs who founded Nomad Artisan Company have a lot to share. Mary and Melissa, I'm super excited to have you all on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So first, I'd love to hear about each one of your backgrounds, where you're from, kind of what you did before, and then we'll start talking about how you guys met and then the company you guys formed. Mary, do you want to start?
Sure. So I grew up in southern Utah on a cattle ranch. So I live in Miami now. It's kind of similar, which, okay, it's very different. I went to art school at a local community college about 45 minutes away. I taught for several years in high school education. In summers, I teach college, I teach art. And then I had a dream of owning a ranch on Highway 89, and I was saving money for that. But I realized that I wanted to continue my art education. So I jumped in my truck. I went down to Los Angeles. I got accepted into Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. And then that's where I got to LA, and that's where I met my husband. And so we've been married 8 years now. And now we have 2 kids, and we have one on the way, due in a week and a half.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. Thank you. So that's a little
awesome.
bit about my background.
And up until there, had you done anything entrepreneurial? Had you started anything, side hustles or anything else like that?
Okay. So I grew up my family has a cattle ranch, and they also have a greenhouse business. And so I kind of grew up in this business oriented thing. And when I was teaching high school, I'm like, oh, I have these really cool ideas, on the side, I want to do something. So I actually pulled it out. You're going to laugh. Okay. So I'm like, when I was a little girl, I loved these little doll diaper bags. So I decided I was going to sell these in the summer when I wasn't teaching. So I made a ton of these, and I would go to craft shows, and I'd sell these little doll diaper bags. They're for little girls to put like their diapers in and their bottles,
Nice.
So I had that. And then there was a company that I liked their makeup, and I won't say their name. They drive pink cars though, back in the day. And I wanted to do it so I could get like half off on their makeup, but also maybe make some money on the side. But I never did much with that. So I pretty much just bought my own makeup. So that was my entrepreneurial events, was my doll diaper bags in the summers. But I only did that one summer because they were a flop.
Yeah. But I'm sure you learned a lot from that. So that's fascinating. I'm sure we'll get back to that. Melissa, what about you?
Yeah, totally.
Your background?
No, yeah. So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. And I really grew up with parents who are entrepreneurs. My dad and mom now own a candy factory, but I grew up with it at like ground zero. We started in like swamp meets in Santa Fe Springs. Then went to farmers markets. Farmers markets turned into a retail store. And when they wanted to expand, they moved here to Salt Lake to kind of more manufacture the product. So I always was around that energy and it wasn't just, it didn't start with this big thing, I just saw how hard it was, how difficult it was. And it's funny because I always said I would never own my own business because I saw how hard it was with my parents. But I think just naturally, I've always kind of wanted to do something. I remember when I was young, I would buy chocolate bars at the 99-cent store. They would sell 3 for $1. And I was always hungry, like during school. And I remember thinking, you know what? I bet you if I buy these chocolate bars, and it was like candies, chips, whatever. I was like, if I buy these and I bring them to school, people will buy them. And they did. And so, I did get caught a few times. The teacher caught me and she's like, you're not allowed to. It has to be a fundraiser. I did a few
I didn't know this.
white
I've never
lies
heard
here
this
and
story.
there.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was actually my favorite thing to do because first of all, I always had food on me, but also I was making some money on the side, with it.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, so
I have to tell you, this is a very funny story because I did the same thing. I would do the arbitrage. I would go to the convenience store, buy candy bars and sell them at lunch. And that was to pay for my comic book addiction and to buy comic books, a lot of which I still have to this day, by the way. But this story of candy bar arbitrage in school is a very prevalent story. If you talk to probably like 100 entrepreneurs, there is a high percentage of them that will tell you that, yes, this is where I got my start. I would buy candy bars and sell them to my classmates at school. So it's very funny that you say this because I have heard this story over and over again and I've lived it myself. So that's an awesome start.
That's awesome.
So tell me, so you two were both in LA. How did you guys meet? How did you guys first get to know each other?
Yeah, so we actually met through church. And I had overheard that Mary had a ceramic wheel in her garage and a kiln. And I got really excited because I did ceramics for a few years in school and I absolutely loved it. So I just kind of went over to her and I said, hey, can I come over and, play with clay with you and stuff, just because I just really loved it. And that's when we really got to know each other. I didn't know she taught ceramics in school and stuff. I did know she was an art teacher, but I didn't know specifically that she had taught ceramics for a while.
So you guys started playing with clay. And then how long was it after that before you decided like, hey, let's do this as a business. Let's like start a side hustle and see if we can make a go of this.
Well, I'd say probably a month into it. I had been the few months prior to that, just kind of having some ideas of like, maybe I would sell ceramic pottery to greenhouse operations, like my parents' greenhouse operations, or, I was thinking, okay, I can make stuff. So I made a bunch of stuff for them. It was a flop. I'm like, well, maybe I could do, jewelry. I tried that on Etsy because some friends wanted it on Etsy and that was a flop. And I had been really stressed because I was doing illustrations for a book company and they were stressing me out. And so I was like, I don't want to have, this type of stress on me. I'd rather have something else that I'm not so stressed. So the illustration and fine art can be my, my passion, but then I can make money another way. So I was tinkering around with these ideas. And then I met Melissa and it felt right, and, I believe in a higher source. I was driving one day and, God was like, you need to ask Melissa to be your business partner. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy. That's weird. She probably think I'm nuts, because we had never talked business. We had never talked about, because we were just, one person would be on the wheel while the other person was hand building stuff, making earrings or whatnot. And just for ourselves. And we had never talked business at all. And so I'm like, well, this is weird. And so I was kind of worried to ask her. And I asked her, it's kind of like a weird marriage proposal, right? You're going to have someone go in business with you. And Melissa said yes. And Melissa, I think you can say from your end that you had said before that you would never do a business because you'd seen what your parents went through, right?
Yeah. And businesses in general, I think so many times we see the final product and we're like, oh my goodness, look at success, you know. But growing up with it, you just see all the highs and the lows. And the highs can be so high and the lows can just, you know, kick you in your gut. And so it was something that really like scared me. But for whatever reason, when Mary asked me, it was almost like I probably should have thought about it a little bit more than I actually did. But it was just like the instinct of yes, you know, and I think it was because I also trusted. I mean, I was working with her and I saw her craft and everything. And so I was just like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing that you say there that I think you're exactly right. In media, a lot of times there's these stories about companies and they only show the shiny ending, right? The happy, shiny ending, unless it's something that's gone wildly wrong. And there's lawsuits and things like that. And then they talk about that. But other than that, they only talk about the shiny endings on companies. And they don't talk about all of the heartache and trouble and sleepless nights and worrying about making payroll and all of those things that go along the way. And I think it's important for us as entrepreneurs to talk about those things because I think people should understand kind of what goes into that. So let's talk about those early days then when you decided, okay, we're going to do this as like a real gig, side hustle kind of business thing. How did you get started? Neither one of you had started a company before this, right? This was the first time?
In the summers, I would teach college art courses where I was a private contractor and I would go to colleges and I'd say, hey, I want to teach for you. So I had my own business license for that, but that was just something that was affiliated with teaching. So never a product-based business.
Right.
So this was very, very new for both of us.
So, okay. So then in the first kind of launching, how did you figure out what you should make and who you were going to sell it to? Like, how did you get those pieces to fit together?
So, well, what I remember, because this was 5 years ago, Melissa, because this is the start of our 5th year in business, we decided we would take like 6 months and we would get everything all figured out, our collections, our photography, figure out how to do our own website, how to do licenses in Los Angeles. So we had the 6 months time frame. We were like, okay, we're going to launch in January coming in 2018. So we did a branding kit and Melissa had that idea. So we went to Pinterest and we grabbed 12 pictures of what we wanted our company to feel and look like. And then we printed those out just on regular paper and we took them with us on photo shoots so that way we could start building up images for our website and also the feel of our company. And Melissa, do you want to go from there?
Yeah, well, and I would say that we also we weren't afraid to ask for help from friends and that are entrepreneurs. We got a lot of help from some friends of ours that own their own business. And we also just weren't afraid to YouTube a lot of things and figure out things ourselves. So like our photography, our models are our friends or family. You know, we kind of never saw this as just a hobby or a craft or something that we were going to do. We knew that we wanted this business and we wanted to from the get-go kind of have a foundation of what we want people to see, like what our business would feel like or what it would look like. We made it a priority to have a clear vision of what it is that we wanted. And then we just kind of went for it full force kind of it wasn't perfect. It wasn't, but we did it the best that we could.
So, okay. So you guys took 6 months to kind of get everything in place and kind of launch. Now looking back at it 5 years later, do you feel like that was the right move? Do you think you should have done it differently? Like in retrospect, how do you feel now?
Yeah, I think it worked really well. I just wish I personally was a little bit more fearless in what in what we did. I think Mary is very good at that. She's just like, let's go. We can do it. Yes. And sometimes I'm very hesitant. I'm like, well, no, we got to have A through Z first lined up and then we can move forward. And she would be like, well, yeah, but you know what? Like, we've got this, like, let's do it. I think that's what helped me, which is good about a partnership, you know, sometimes is like she would help me kind of get the courage, and we would just go to boutiques and be like, what is it that you look for? Before we even had products to show them, we went to boutiques and said, like, what is it that you kind of like look for? What are the price points you look for? How does wholesale work? And this is, you know, normally maybe that's not, you would think like, oh, that's embarrassing, or why would I go to a store and ask all these questions? I should have the answers if I want to be giving them a service. But I thought it was brilliant because it just really helped us. I don't know, like we weren't afraid to ask, or I should say Mary wasn't afraid to ask, and I was just right behind her, you know, asking with her.
Well, mind you, I was still nervous. I remember we were in LA going to one of the first boutiques we were in, and I was stuttering because like I was asking them questions, and I had a little, treehouse in LA, and I was stuttering. And it's funny because Melissa was also going out to ask, and we realized that we hit the same boutique. So we're like, they probably think we're weird that we hit the same boutique.
Okay, so that was one early mistake, is that you didn't divide and conquer. You just kept conquering the same places,
like, let's go
over and over again. But I mean, hey, at least that way, if they gave you different answers, you knew there was something up. If they gave you the same answers, then you knew those were the answers.
Sure.
So maybe that was a smart move on your part. What other kind of like looking back at it now, like were there mistakes that you feel like you made that, you know, now looking back at it, you feel you would do it differently now, knowing everything that you know, Mary?
Well, I think we would have launched sooner than the 6 months, because we didn't realize that I would be moving very quickly to Miami. And, you know, we only had 4 months together, Melissa, like when we launched the company, of like her and I being back and forth with each other. And I feel like if we would have known, we would have done it a couple months sooner.
Yeah. So you two have been basically a remote company then for almost the entire time, of like well before the pandemic.
Yeah.
You've been on both coasts. That's fascinating.
It was cool.
and what's interesting is that compared to a lot of companies that are doing remote work, they're all kind of digital knowledge work. Y'all have an actual physical product, so that makes remote work different and harder in some ways. Like, how have you dealt with that aspect of it?
Well, so in the beginning, I was the only one with the kiln, and when I moved, I had brought the kiln with me. So what I would do is I would make everything in the kiln and ship it to Melissa. And then Melissa was gluing and then adhering and making all the findings for the pieces and then shipping. And so like, because when we invested in our company, we said we didn't want to, you know, we wanted to make it so that we were adding to the family income, that we could one day move out of our tiny apartments in LA, help our husbands to be able to make mortgage payments. We invested $254 each in our company.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to stop you there and ask you a question. That's such a random amount. $254, $508 total. Why $508?
Well, I think it's because we used to go downtown LA and we'd buy our, you know, sterling silver findings. And so we're like, okay, keep track of your receipts. And then we totaled them all up along with the clay that we had bought. We're like, okay, this is it. This is all we're putting in. And that was it, right, Melissa? Am I right on that? I don't even remember why.
And it was $508 worth.
Yeah. And it's funny, real quick.
Okay.
Well, I think we also deducted, we took out, like when Melissa was coming to hang out on weekends for the ceramics, you know, before we started a business, she had to pay like $10 a time or something, or $8 a time. And don't worry, Melissa, you don't have to pay that, you know, those 5 times you came.
Yeah, I think I made it.
But it could have been
factored. Yeah. So, you know, I think this is an important story for listeners too, you know, because a lot of people look at companies like yours and other companies and see how big they've grown. And it's hard to understand, like, how much money does it actually take to start some of these things? Because everybody thinks like it's probably, you know, $50,000, $100,000. No, it's $508. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's still a lot of money. It's not like a small amount of money, but it's a lot more accessible than $10,000 or $50,000, right? So, I appreciate the fact that you all shared that, and hopefully that helps people kind of realize that they can do it themselves. So, okay, so as you start growing here, and you've gone to these boutiques and you've talked to them, and you've, what we call it a lot of times is customer discovery. You ask them, what do you need? And then you made the thing that they needed. So you were able to hit a few boutiques like that, I'm sure. But how did you start kind of growing your list of places that stock your products? Like, how did you get access to them? How did they find out about you? Did anybody come to you, or did you have to go to everybody?
Thankfully with social media, we have so many platforms that we can use to kind of grow. And so we, in the beginning, really relied on Instagram, or had an expectation, I should say. And we also did a lot of art fairs in Los Angeles. So there, a lot of people, I would say, is where they started to find us more. Nowadays, it seems like it's so easy to grow on Instagram and this and that, but it's actually very, very hard. And so I think in the beginning, that's one of the mistakes too, is that we just had this expectation that it would just happen. And we didn't realize how difficult it was to slowly make it happen. But we were really fortunate to, again, put ourselves out there. I went to a garage sale once that a pretty well-known interior designer was doing. And I just had this feeling that I had to go back and gift her something. And I called Mary, and Mary's like, yeah, let's do it. And so I think I either picked her up or she picked me up, and we went back to the garage sale, and we went up to the interior designer, and she was really sweet, right on the spot, just opened her gift on her story. And that gave us our first little jump. And it also gave us, I think, our first little confidence, build of confidence, and saw the power of Instagram and that. And yeah, I would say that's kind of how we just started seeing what worked, what didn't. And I mean, and it evolves because that's changed very much. Our outlook on that is not exactly how it was maybe back then. But yeah, that's kind of just, it's been a slow and steady growth. I wouldn't say it's oh, we have it all figured out. But we have found different platforms where, either people have found us, or we also do a lot of cold contacting still, kind of the old fashioned way, but now just through social media for boutiques and stuff.
And I do want to say, for those that are listening out there, that Melissa and I, when we started the business, we thought, okay, we're going to get 10,000 followers in the first 6 months. And we realized that it's not easy. And also we realized that numbers mean nothing on your social media platforms. You can have 2,000 followers and still be doing really well financially, because you have other avenues. We have retail, we have wholesale. We have friends that love our product. They go and they talk to boutiques for us in different states. So that's what one thing is. Be careful of looking at numbers on social media, because it doesn't give true. We think that you have to have a lot of people in order to make money, but you don't. So right now we're at 5,000 followers.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, so Instagram is a tool y'all use to kind of connect with people and kind of create a fan base. What other tools do you use in the business? Maybe tools that other people don't see, but internal tools and things that really help you manage the business well. And maybe there's different tools that both of you use. So Mary, I'll start with you. Is there something that you use that helps you manage and deal with the business day to day?
So we use Squarespace, where we can build our own website, so that we're not going through anyone to build our website. And it's nice that there's these type of platforms you can build your own website on, and you can have total control over it. We also have ShipStation that we use. We also have Hiscox Business to cover our butt if something happens, which we think is important. And we started doing Hiscox at the very beginning when we started doing some of the craft fairs, because they asked us. like Spring at the Silos in Magnolia and Celebration in Waco, Texas. They asked us to have that type of liability, and we're like, well, we should do it, right? So those tools that was a plug for Hiscox, thank you. But those tools are really good for us because, like day to day, we need to make sure that if liability happens, right, we don't want the liability to come back on us and our houses be taken or different things. And so we need to have a coverage, like I said, Melissa and I, from the very beginning, we always thought of this as a business. And we make sure that we keep our numbers low for our expenses, a month, because we're still a lean machine, right? We're still plugging away. It's our hustle. We're moms foremost is what we do. And so then like on the side, we're doing this business, and it's actually like a full-time job mom and a full-time job business. And we have to learn how to like try to, shift back and forth. We also use Fair. Yeah. We're starting on fair.com, and that's a wholesale platform. We also have a wholesale page on our website that people can log in and buy wholesale from us. So we're trying to diversify, finding different people in different ways. But those are some of the ways that we're working right now that helps us day to day.
Yeah. What about you, Melissa? Is there any tool that Mary didn't mention that you're like, oh, we should mention this and people will like using it?
No, honestly, I think she did really well at just, all the things. But overall, I think it being just us two right now, and, every once in a while, just having some help, I think just consistency and the time that goes into it, those are numbers that you don't typically get to see on paper. And it's just one of those things where I think knowing that, what you put in kind of is typically what you get out. Maybe not in the beginning, especially as an entrepreneur, you could be putting in all this time and, you seeing the numbers at the end of the day, and it can be very discouraging. But if you're consistent with what you're putting in, eventually it's going to pay off,
And I will say can I say one more thing real quick? Is like for those people that are starting out a business, like a website is $30 a month. Okay. And which is awesome. It has all the financials built into it. You can, like, Squarespace is $30 a month. ShipStation is $9 a month, right? It's feasible. Like, and they do take a cut, Squarespace, from your sales, but it's very, minimal. But like, you don't need a lot to get started, per month for what you're paying for your back end. Cause like, we don't have a brick and mortar shop. Like if we had a brick and mortar shop, you'd have to have that rent. So we're a lean machine, we're like 120 a month what we have to like factor in. And after that, like, what a blessing that's all we have right now. Well, I mean, we have our expenses of our kiln and of our electricity of where we're living, but comparatively, right, anyone can start a business at that. Like, oh, okay, if I sell $40 worth of product, I can cover my ShipStation and my Squarespace.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you could start this business with $508 is what I'd say.
Amen.
That's just me. That's just me guessing. Okay. So last question for y'all. If somebody is teetering on the edge of wanting to do something, like starting a side hustle, but isn't, they have that fear or whatever, like what advice would you two give to them about just going ahead and doing it? Melissa, we'll start with you.
Well, for one, I think sometimes we think, well, this is already being done or whatever. But I think there's, even with jewelry, like, I mean, if we were to say, oh, well, there's already earrings out there, well, we would have never done it. Like, there's room for everyone in this space, and also just, I think it's so important for us to kind of just get out of our own way. I think we're the ones that are typically the ones that kind of get very flustered with ourselves, and don't have always a business partner to help push you or help, motivate you. Just know that it's totally doable. But you will never know if you don't start. And there's always that what if in the back of your mind. So it's better to try and fail, whatever you think failure might be, but than to not try at all. Because if you don't try, well, you're never going to get there either way. I think I heard I don't remember what the quote was, but it was like, why not go for your dream? If you don't go for it, it's just going to stay like, it's never going to come true if it's there, if you don't go for it, like what's the point, kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I think a lot of people they overestimate the downside of trying and failing, and underestimate the upside. And the upside doesn't even have to be success, like you say. It could just be learning stuff. And it makes you a better individual at the end of it. So that's great advice. I appreciate that. What about you, Mary? What advice would you give somebody that's teetering on the edge and thinking about starting something?
Yeah, I think why not just go for it, right? Like the road to success, you're going to have bumps and hiccups, right? Just start, like I used to tell my high school students that you look at, who was the greatest, like baseball player of all time? It was Babe Ruth. But who was the greatest strikeout king of all time? It was Babe Ruth. You're going to have failures and hiccups along the way, like Michael Jordan didn't always make his 3 points, his 2-point shots. Like, I think just get out there and begin. And that's where success is. And success isn't money. Success is getting in the chair and doing what you love. And, like what Melissa said, there's always room in the market for another artisan, a craftsman, or a businessman, or another business, because you have your own voice and it's important for the world to hear that. And maybe it doesn't go how you want it to go, but like you said, you're learning, you're growing, you're on that pathway. And like for us, for me and Melissa, success is we get to be creatives and be at home and be moms, like for me, I found like when I moved to Miami, I didn't have friends or family here, and it gave me a focus, and maybe that's what your business is. It gives you a focus. And, one of the nice things about a focus is when it does make money, it is always a perk, but you have to remember, like, be true to you, don't look at other companies, don't look left, don't look right. Be true to who you are as a creative and an individual. Yeah.
Fabulous advice. Appreciate the time, Melissa and Mary. And listeners, Nomad Artisan Company, if you're looking for ceramic earrings, and then also other ceramic stuff, right? It's not just earrings. It's a bunch of stuff, jewelry.
Yes.
Check them out.
And accessories.
Buy their stuff. It's great stuff. I'm going to actually be looking at some of that stuff for my wife and daughter. So there you go.
And if we have inspired you to creative or just to start or to be bold or confident, then we have done our job. That's one of our logos. And we hope that we've inspired you today.
So go start a side hustle and make it a small business today. Thanks a lot, y'all.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast, powered by Hiscox. To learn more about how Hiscox can help protect your small business through intelligent insurance solutions, visit hiscox.com. That's HISCOX.com. And if you have a story you want to hear on this podcast, please visit hiscox.com/share your story. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. You can find me on Twitter at Sanjay, that's SANJAY, or on my website at sanjayparekh.com.